Always proud to do a shout out for this video sponsor, Lost in Cult. They specialize in thoughtfully designed gaming books, music collections, and other collectibles, all designed to celebrate the unique art form that is video games. Their latest design works collection is based on the visually striking cult classic Valhalla cyberpunk bartender action, and you can get a nice discount on it when you use offer code SkillUpVA11 at checkout. Click the link below to grab it now or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Marathon. If you are clicking this video, you probably have 100 questions about Marathon, but you probably have one big one. Is it enough? Is it enough to deliver Bungie from their prolonged period of disruption and uncertainty, a period marked by layoffs and restructure, and a complete upending of Destiny's future development and business model? Is it enough to succeed Destiny as Bungie's next big game? One that will spirit the studio into a new decade of game making the same way that Halo and Destiny did when those games launched? Is it enough for Sony, who bought Bungie for $3.8 billion, a price that now seems astronomical given how the studio has fared since then? Sony are not only nursing Bungie on their balance sheet, they're also nursing a very black eye after the failure of Concord and the cancellation of a number of other live service titles. With that track record behind them, Sony really needs Marathon to be a big win. They desperately need Marathon to be enough. Setting aside all those very loaded questions about the legacy of the studio, the commercials, and the crushing weight of expectations, there's a more fundamental "is this enough" question, and it's this: is this game enough for us, the people who might want to play it? And hell, who even are those people, since an extraction shooter is hardly the sort of experience that's looking to recruit die-hard Destiny fans? Bungie is looking to build an all-new audience here, in a genre that is already pretty well serviced by a number of great games. Set against all of that, is Marathon enough? Well, I've got my own perspective on that since I got the chance to play Marathon last week. Bungie invited me to their studio in Seattle. They generously offered to cover my travel and accommodation costs, but I declined, choosing instead to pay my own costs so that you can be guaranteed truly independent coverage. So, what do I think about Marathon and that big question, is it enough? Well, I'll be totally honest with you and say that I don't think anyone can give you an answer to that question right now, because much to my surprise, Marathon isn't as far along as I had hoped it might be, and while I really enjoy many parts of it, the gaps in it made it difficult for me to get a sense of how this is going to launch, and it made it impossible for me to predict where this one day might end up. So at this point you might be like, uh-oh, what you just said sounds really bad, so I want to really pump the brakes here so no one gets carried away. Marathon is not doing the Concord thing, where the first time we play it is like 2 weeks before it launches. Marathon releases in September of this year, a full 6 months from now. It's getting its first external alpha test at the end of this month. 5 months before its official release, people will be playing this game and giving feedback to Bungie so they can iterate on that feedback. At the same time, there are 300 developers working on this right now, and 300 people can get a fair amount done in 6 months. In addition to that, there were significant portions of this experience that I was not able to test, namely a playable map that wasn't available to us during this playtest, and another map which all the Bungie staff are hyping up massively, going as far as to say as it has like Destiny raid-like mechanics in it. We only got to test 4 of the 6 runners that'll be available at launch. We obviously didn't get to test every single weapon and mod. We couldn't properly test the bounty system. The list goes on and on. So when I say it's hard for me to answer, is this enough? What I'm essentially saying is I have not played enough of this, and the game is still deep in development, so leaping to conclusions at this point would be unfair to the game and to Bungie. Having said all of that, I walk away from my time with Marathon feeling good about some things and not so great about others. As you'd expect, the gunplay is top tier, meeting the industry-leading benchmark that Bungie has maintained since their inception. What you might not expect is how good the enemy AI is here, with NPC enemies providing substantial challenge that make them much more than just resource sinks or noise traps. The visual design is an acquired taste, but in my personal view, it is incredible. I absolutely love it, to the point where I want to make it my personality. It's amazing. I can't get enough of it. Sometimes a setting and a visual style can be just enough to pique your interest in something, but in the case of Marathon, I expect that it's going to be more than enough for a bunch of people. Most importantly, that extraction loop is here and it's working. I think it needs a lot more work to get it feeling truly unique, but as a starting point, I will tell you that Marathon is a fun game that does serve up those butt-clenching moments that you hope for from an extraction shooter. However, as I mentioned before, I did find some of the gaps in this surprising, given that Bungie have been working on this for over 4 years now. As it stands, there's really no new player onboarding experience. It's kind of just like a 5-minute tutorial that teaches you the absolute basics before shoving you out into the main menu and wishing you luck. The game's narrative is, right now, not really written yet. the narrative team were clear that the narrative framework has been built, aka how Bungie plans to tell a story in Marathon, but that story itself is apparently going to be written between now and launch. Bungie have also made clear that we should also expect a very found lore approach to storytelling, less focused on cutscenes and characters, and more focused on world building and narrative delivered through factional bounties. For me, personally, I walk away from my hands-on time with Marathon glad that I played it, interested to play more, but I also walk away with two big questions. Number one, where is that hook that makes me want to play Marathon over the other extraction shooters that I could be playing, or over the other competitive experiences out there right now? In my time with this game, I was enjoying it, but I couldn't feel that thing that made me go, yes, I can see why someone would want to devote their life to this game. I just couldn't feel that, and so I'm still waiting for it. The other question I had was, is it a good idea to charge a premium price for this? It's launching with 6 runners, 3 maps at launch, and 1 extra map in Season 1. Is that enough content to justify the price tag? Is this experience compelling enough to pull people away from alternatives, many of which are free? Bungie says they want to build this game in collaboration with their community, and I fully support that ambition. But if that's the case, then I don't think you should be charging the community an entry fee. My gut tells me that charging a box price for this is a very, very bad idea. But I would be delighted to be proven wrong on that front when Marathon launches later this year. Okay, so let's spend a bit of time talking about what exactly Marathon is, and then we can start talking more specifically about its individual components. Marathon is a straight up PvP extraction shooter. Before I went into this preview session, I had wondered if Bungie were looking to do something more ambitious with the extraction shooter genre. I wondered if they might be using extraction as a foundation for a more persistent, social, story-driven experience, something that might bridge the gap between PvE and PvP, something that might appeal to Destiny players who are, by and large, a PvE-focused audience. If any of those things do exist in Marathon right now, I didn't see them. As someone who's broadly familiar with the extraction subgenre, this felt pretty familiar. There is no social space to run around in with your friends, collecting bounties, maintaining your gear, etc. The game is entirely driven by this menu screen. One option lets you view and select your runner. We'll come back to that very soon. Another option lets you tinker with your loadout and buy gear from the black market. The final option lets you look through factional bounties and factional progression, which is just, more menus. Now, obviously, it is very normal for extraction shooters to do exactly this. With the exception of The Division and its Dark Zone, no other extraction shooter that I can think of has any sort of interactive social space where you can hang out with other players, or interact with factional NPCs in person, or visit specific vendors to get certain items or services. So this is, broadly speaking, par for the course for this genre. But again, this is exactly the sort of thing that I thought Bungie would take a swing at as they look to step into this genre and put their own unique stamp on it. Bungie is a studio that puts social at the core of their experiences, and social definitely lives at the core of Marathon's gameplay since it is tuned as a 3-player game. But it might also have been really interesting to see how that social aspect could have been delivered outside the core gameplay as well. So before diving into that core gameplay loop, I'll just briefly describe everything else that sits around it. So Marathon is not a hero shooter, but it does have heroes, essentially. You play as a runner, which is a 3D printed synthetic that houses your consciousness. That runner has 2 abilities and 2 passives, and in combination with your loadout choices, you will be able to shape your own playstyle. More on that later. The loadout screen is where you can equip up to 2 weapons, mods for those weapons, a grenade, as well as various core things and shields and implants, all of which provide you various stat bonuses or gameplay perks. You also have a backpack where you can bring whatever you please, but you'll most likely be bringing ammo and consumables, leaving as much free room as possible so you can collect as much loot as you can when you head out. There is a black market shop where you can buy ammo, consumables, and low-level weapons. However, as you unlock factional rep, the offerings at that black market will improve, meaning that later in the season, you'll be able to buy more interesting stuff, so you're not always starting every round with the lowest level weaponry and gear. By the way, the gear you equip does not have any cosmetic qualities. This is a game that will have a cosmetic cash shop where you buy skins, but Bungie weren't talking about the game's monetization at this point, so I have nothing to say. The faction menu is where you'll go to collect faction bounties. Now, these are important for a bunch of reasons. Number one, Bungie says that these bounties will be one of the primary storytelling tools that they use, though they didn't really elaborate on that. These bounties also give you specific goals to work towards when you drop onto a map. I had one bounty where I just had to, block a certain amount of damage with a runner's shield. That was the only one I could unlock actually, since bounties seemed to be on a daily timer and the rest of them had already been completed when I sat down at my test PC. One of the big questions you might have about Marathon is, what is the meta progression like? If you're unfamiliar, extraction shooters are almost entirely predicated on the threat of losing everything you bring with you when you load onto a map. So if you have a bad run and you lose all your stuff, what are you taking out with you to make sure you feel less bad about that? And are you unlocking permanent gear or stat upgrades as you go that makes it easier and or more interesting as you get deeper into a season? So there are two answers to that question. Bungie has made clear that we should expect cosmetic unlocks that celebrate account milestones, and those will carry over season to season. You'll keep those permanently. In terms of player power, everything you do in Marathon, from killing an NPC to extracting with loot, will earn you experience, and that experience goes towards factional reputation that then unlocks nodes in this factional progression tree. These nodes all provide you with some sort of benefit that is permanently applied to your account for the remainder of the season, and it's things like, more buying options at the black market, faster revive times, faster ability charge rates, etc. At the end of a season, all of your progress in these factional progression charts is wiped, and all of the loot you may have collected during a season is deleted. Every season resets everyone back to square one, and it's one of the many reasons that I suspect Marathon will hold very little appeal to your average Destiny fan, because you can't get these people to give up loot they earned 6 years ago that they've never even bothered to equip once. It just sits in their vault. So how do you think they're going to like having their entire arsenal deleted every 3 months, or however long a season ends up being? So that's basically everything that exists outside of the playable experience. Now let's take a look at how all of this works when you get boots on the ground. Marathon is very deliberately designed to be a 3-player co-op extraction experience. You can squad up with 2 other friends, or you can be match made to fill a squad of 3. You can turn off squad feel and go in solo. However, Bungie were emphatic that the game is not tuned to do that. There is no solo only queue, and the enemy NPC patrols and the PvE challenges are tuned for 3 players. So yes, you can go in solo and do all of this stuff on your own, but you're not meant to do that, so you should expect a significantly more difficult time. After queuing, you will drop onto a fresh map at the same time as every other enemy player. Bungie were tinkering with the idea of having persistent maps that players drop in and out of dynamically, but they very rightly decided that extraction game pacing is very dependent on that opening window, when you know that other players are also going to be at the edges of a map moving toward the center. That means you can't join a map after it's been active for 15 minutes or whatever. Everyone starts at the same time. When you arrive at a map, there is one overriding objective. Get as much stuff as you can into your bags and then extract with it. The stuff you're collecting can be weapons, consumables, gear, materials that are used to purchase nodes in that faction progression tree, and Bungie is also hinting at some lore or story items being extractable as well. So that's your overriding goal, and you get to determine how you approach it. You could literally land, loot one location, and if you get lucky with some good materials or whatever, you may just want to haul ass out of there straight away. But maybe you want to stick it out, looting and killing as much as possible before the map's 25-minute timer runs out. This is a really important thing to note for people who are not used to this genre. You really do set the pace here. This is not like playing a battle royale game where the shrinking circle leads to an inevitable conclusion, or a tactical shooter where it's all about quick rounds. This is a game where you set your own pace, playing as safe or as risky as you choose to, and that does make it easier to learn than other competitive PvP experiences, since you can spend the first, dozen hours playing super safe before looking to up the intensity. Alright, so the goal of looting and extracting is your overarching goal, but what are you doing moment to moment? Well, it kind of falls into 3 buckets. The first is fighting NPCs. This is one of the big differentiators that Marathon offers, really, since fights against NPCs are much more common here than in other extraction shooters I've played, with the exception of the Division's Dark Zone. Most major landmarks on a map will be patrolled by at least a squad or 2 of NPCs, and let me tell you, they are no joke. These things are not just bullet sponges or noise traps. The enemy AI on these NPCs is extremely good. I would kind of liken them to playing against a fallen captain in a Destiny strike when playing on one of the harder difficulties. These NPCs often have very sophisticated movesets, they seek cover, they change elevation, they bum rush you when you're out of position, and they take absolutely no prisoners. Twice my squad was wiped by NPCs, which sounds utterly ridiculous until you go up against these guys yourself, and I guarantee you'll be like, these NPCs got hands. The second bucket of things you'll do are various PvE activities. If you've played Destiny, these activities are very similar to patrol activities that you do when you're exploring the planets in free roam. For example, you'll trigger a supply shipment and that'll throw up a big flare so that everyone in the nearby area knows that you're in that activity, and you'll now need to hold out until that drop is complete. Maybe no other players try to contest that spot and you get some free loot, but maybe they do and it's on like Donkey Kong. Another of these activities is one that involves finding various numbered panels tucked away across the map. When you activate the first one, you see a number, and then you need to find another panel that has the same number on it. That will then direct you to a different part of the map. You do that like 3 times, and then you get a nice loot payoff at the end. Right now, I don't think these activities are working. Some of them, particularly that numbered panel activity, are really tedious to complete, and you spend an inordinate amount of time kind of just looking for this panel, and it should be easy to find, and then you have to spend all this time schlepping across the map to do it all over again. I think the supply drops aren't providing enough reward to get people really willing to contest them. There's another activity that involves calling down a high-level NPC who dies a little too quickly. Much of this can be smoothed out with some tinkering and tuning, but there's a bigger foundational issue related to all of these, and it's that you're spending so much time fighting NPCs and doing these activities that you spend less time fighting other players than you should be. And that neatly brings us to the third bucket of stuff you're doing while playing Marathon. You're PvPing. Fighting other squads of players, hoping to take them down so you can steal all their best stuff and extract with it. Now, when these PvP showdowns happen, it's fucking awesome. One thing I haven't spoken about much yet is the fact that this is a Bungie shooter, which means it feels incredible to play. The shooting and movement mechanics are 11 out of 10. The weapon feel and recoil and the sound they make, 11 out of 10. When you have to fight other players in Marathon, it feels fantastic. And I think things like weapon DPS throughput, time to kill, and movement tech is all really well calibrated to arrive at an experience that feels tactical, but not overly punishing. This is not a game that's all about one-shot kills. Its combat pacing is far closer to Destiny, where that time to kill gives you a bit more breathing room during an engagement, and needless to say, the better geared you are, the more breathing room you'll have. But the problem is that right now, you are spending way too much time doing busy work on the map rather than fighting enemy players. And so that tense extraction loop that Bungie are aiming for here, that loop isn't fully closed. This is when I want to start zooming out and talking about Marathon overall. I love this setting. I love this aesthetic. I love Bungie's core gameplay mechanics, and I love fighting other players in this game. The problem is that Bungie have not yet figured out a way to really force players into fights in Marathon. It has activities that should be doing that, but they kind of aren't, and there's so many of these activities and so many NPCs dotted on the map that a player can sometimes go an entire round without ever fighting another team. And on the one hand, yeah, that does make the game more accessible and welcoming to players not accustomed to this genre, but on the other hand, there's something missing at the core of Marathon, and until it's slotted into place, I don't think this game is going to find the audience it's chasing. I recall an interesting thing that Bungie said during a group Q&A session when someone asked why they weren't offering a solo queue option where everyone drops in solo. They said that when they tried that in the past, it would lead to everyone just playing really stealthily, not wanting to be the first to make noise so they wouldn't get targeted by everyone else. I thought that was a really telling response because it said a lot about how Bungie wants you to play Marathon. I don't think they want you to hunt other players as much as they want you doing activities that may see you collide with other players. But like I said, those collisions aren't happening often enough right now. I think a lot about Hunt Showdown. Now, that is a game that has figured out its loop. Drop onto a map with another player, you hunt for clues that point you to the boss's location, you head to that location and set up for the boss, you fight the boss, making a huge amount of noise while doing so, while other players would have also had the same clues pointing to that location. Then when it's time to harvest the boss's essence, there's a great pillar of dark energy above the location, making you visible to the entire map. Then when it's time to extract that essence and escape the map, you are literally marked for all players to see so they can hunt you down or just be waiting for you at the extraction point. Hunt's extraction loop is so good that as I explain it to you now, I wish I was playing Hunt. Marathon does not have the equivalent of that yet. It has almost everything else it needs to be a successful extraction shooter, but it's missing that one thing. The loop is not yet closed. That's not the only thing missing from Marathon right now though. I do think these runner kits are really basic to the point where I'm like, come on Bungie, what else you got? This is the studio that designed the Strand and Stasis subclasses. And here the kits are like, ping nearby enemies once every 30 seconds, or pull up a shield that can block a little bit of damage, or go invisible for a few seconds. Honestly, I'm just gonna say it, these kits are tactical and balanced, but they're really boring and generic, and I think Bungie can do way, way better than this. Story is another big gap right now. Bungie were very upfront about the fact that they've built the narrative framework for Marathon. They haven't written the actual narrative yet. It's giving vanilla Destiny, and while I don't think it's fair to jump to conclusions on this stuff, I would have loved for this preview to have had some narrative hooks already in place so that I could start getting excited about this new universe. I know all of this sounds really doom and gloom, so I do want to come back to what I said at the start of this video because it's kind of the most important takeaway, and I really hope I'm getting the point across clearly. Marathon is 5 months from launch. It's about to get its first public alpha. A lot can change in 5 months, and it's possible that at least some of the issues I've spoken about here could be addressed before launch. Furthermore, it's possible that all the solutions to my problems with Marathon are already in the game, but I just wasn't able to see them because one day with a game like this is not enough to be able to fully size it up. Maybe runners do become more interesting to play as you unlock more stuff in the progression tree or unlock better weapon mods. Maybe there is some storytelling already in the game and I just didn't see it. Maybe that loop does work when you've got a larger, more experienced player base playing the game rather than a bunch of content creators playing it for the first time. But even with all of those concessions, I still have this gut feeling that Marathon will launch one way and then it will undergo a rapid metamorphosis as Bungie continue to build the game post-launch. I get the feeling that the Marathon that launches in September will be version 1.0, and by the end of 2026, we'll be on version 3 or whatever. Anyone who's played Destiny knows what I'm talking about. Bungie build the airplane while it's in the air. That's what they've done for the past decade, and I expect it to be the same here. I personally am willing to go with them on that journey. As unpopular as it is to say, I love Bungie and I love their games, and I would love Marathon to be my go-to PvP game. And I actually kind of like hearing that Bungie plan to build this game with the help of their community. But I don't think you can say we're going to build this game with the help of our community while still charging a premium upfront price tag for it. It's like you gotta pick one. Either the game is built and you charge for it, or it isn't, and you welcome people in for free so they can help do some of the work for you. Stepping back from that, there's a simple reality that a game like this needs a vast player base to be successful. The psychological barrier to entry for the extraction shooter genre is huge, because your average player is not going to love the idea of paying $40 or whatever for a game where they lose all of their best loot when they have a bad run, and then they lose absolutely everything they've collected every few months. This is a hardcore genre, and if Bungie are serious about welcoming in the type of player who doesn't typically play this game, then I don't think an upfront price tag makes sense. You just need to get these people in, and then you can, sell battle passes or cosmetics or whatever. And that's setting aside how entrenched the competition is right now. Tarkov is huge. Hunt Showdown has basically the same concurrent player count that Destiny 2 does right now. I'll put it to you this way. When I was in New York, I caught up with a friend of mine who has a senior role at a publisher, and their job is to review and fund games. This person sees over 150 pitches every year from developers who want money to be able to make their game, and he tells me that one of the most important questions he asks these people is, the kind of player that you want to play your game, what game are they playing right now? And is your game good enough to pull those people away from that game? Right now, it's too early to judge if Marathon might be good enough to pull people away from the competition, or if it might be novel enough to welcome in players who typically don't play these sorts of games. But I do know that that question becomes much more difficult to answer when those players need to reckon with an upfront box price. That is what I think about Marathon. It's a nuanced take, so I hope I've communicated it well. But just in case I haven't, I'm gonna try it one more time. There is a lot that I like about what Bungie are doing with Marathon. There's some stuff that I don't like as much, but I do think it will improve. Crucially, I think there's something missing from Marathon's core gameplay loop. And once it's slotted in, Marathon's gonna really start to hum. But with it being absent, it's really difficult to get a sense of where Marathon is headed or where it might one day end up. I personally am glad that Bungie are making Marathon available so early so that we can give them the feedback that they'll need, and I'm also okay with a game like this launching in a sort of like minimal viable product status, because I trust that Bungie will eventually make it great. But I do think that a box price for this is going to make that journey much more difficult for Bungie. It's cringe to say it, I know, but I like Bungie a lot, and I'd love for Marathon to be a huge success for them. There are so many foundations here that make me optimistic for the future, and if I was a betting man, I would bet on Marathon. But right now, I think it's just too early to be able to come to any definitive conclusions on it, so we're just going to have to wait and see what Bungie has in store for us as we head towards that September 23rd release. Time for an all-new offering from this video sponsor, Lost in Cult. Always really exciting to see when they're cooking on something new, because their portfolio of beautifully designed and thoughtful gaming collections are among the best ways to celebrate gaming as an art form. I personally have picked up a number of their releases in the past, my favorite being this absolutely stunning Sable collection, which proudly sits on my coffee table to this day. Lost in Cult's latest offering is based on yet another indie cult classic, Valhalla Cyberpunk Bartender Action. This standout indie hit has garnered a gigantic fanbase over the years thanks to its cyberpunk aesthetic, its deep narrative, strong characters, and of course the amazing art and music. As with all books in the Design Works range, this is more than just an art book. It's a complete look at the game's development journey, the impact it's had on developers, players, and the gaming medium as a whole, all wrapped up in a beautifully designed collectible piece that encapsulates all that makes Valhalla the celebrated fan favorite that it is. The deluxe edition, which is still available to pre-order as a timed campaign exclusive, is a true must-have for fans of the game and appreciators of video game art and the industry at large. Included is a beautiful hardcover variant enclosed with a special slipcase and housed within a presentation box designed to have the look and feel of a real drinks delivery box, including world stickers to complete the look. Also included alongside the book is a series of signature posters, in-fiction flyers, and art cards, including 3 recreations of in-game flyers, 2 iconic posters to proudly display your best boss status, and 4 quality art cards displaying some of the game's best art. In addition to a printed broadsheet from the Augmented Eye and 4 enamel pin badges based on iconic items from the Valhalla universe, the real star of the show in this edition is the Sapphic Pussy Rhapsody novella. This is the downloadable short story from the game, written by Fernando Damas and illustrated by Merenjdal, available officially in print for the first time. Of course, if you're watching this after the pre-order campaign closes on June 5th, or you just want to grab the book itself for its wonderful content and art, that will remain available, but do be quick on that deluxe edition. Lost in Cult have always produced truly incredible books that are must-haves, and they've consistently supported this channel. So if this looks up your alley, then please show your support and help support this channel in turn by using offer code SkillUpVA11 over at www.lostincult.co.uk, or just click the link in the description below. That's lostincult.co.uk. Offer code SkillUpVA11 and you'll get 5% off this brand new Valhalla offering or anything else on the Lost in Cult website. Thanks to Lost in Cult for sponsoring the video, and a big thanks to you for watching it.